Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the Ruger SFAR AR10s in general, why they generally suck, and then we're going to talk about some of the problems like the firearms blog found with their Ruger SFAR rifle. We have a second version of the gun out here. So in our first video, really love the rifle, but I also said in the first video, this is a sample set of one. I hope all the other Rugers are as good as this one, because if they are, they hit it out of the park. Apparently, the folks over at the firearms blog got their hands on one and it wouldn't run very well at all. So that prompted us to grab another gun from Copper. These are guns straight out of distribution. Ruger is not sending us these guns, and we're going to find out just how reliable the two of them are in today's video. But we also want to talk about why AR-10s suck. And if you're wanting to buy an AR-10, these are things you should probably know about the rifle system before you invest in one, because no two rifles from different manufacturers are the same. So let's get started with today's video. At the opening of the video, you saw a table full of bits, parts, and pieces from various AR-10s that we have out here this afternoon. And this is just a quick demonstration as to why AR-10s are just all over the place. There really isn't a standard AR-10 that anybody sticks to, unlike the M4 rifle, the AR-15 M16. They're pretty much standardized across the board, thereby making aftermarket parts, finding them, using them, installing them quite easy. Not the case with all the AR-10s out there, because they vary so much. And let's just take a look at the bolts, carriers, and recoil assemblies of the different AR-10s we have out here today, just to highlight the differences. Here we have a standard M4 recoil spring and buffer assembly. This is a standard setup. This is right out of an M4 rifle. And you can see that the spring is about 10.5 inches in length. That would be within the realm of a standard M4 buffer and spring assembly. Moving over to the POF Revolution, you'll notice we have a very small bolt and carrier setup. Again, this is about 5.56 sized in terms of its length and diameter. The bolt head's obviously bigger. And this is its recoil system. So now it's using a standard carbine length buffer, like out of a 5.56. But if we take a look at the spring is a foot long. That makes this a rifle length spring. So this is something that you would find in an AR-15A2, for example. Okay, so this is longer than the carbine length. Now if we move over to the new Ruger SFAR, the bolt carrier is different than the POF. They're not going to be cross-compatible. There's a number of differences dimensionally in the bolts and stuff like that. But if you take a look at the recoil spring and buffer standard M4, come down here, measure this out, and this thing measures 13.5, almost 13.75 inches. So this is on the extreme long side of what would be okay in a standard rifle length recoil system like an AR-15A2. This is probably one of the longest recoil springs I've ever seen. That goes to the new Ruger SFAR. Here's the G2. And this dates back to 2014. This would be one of the earliest attempts by any company to shorten the action of the AR-10. So you'll notice that the bolt and carrier are slightly different than the other two. The carrier slightly longer than the other two, which are actually 5.56 size. This one's just a wee bit longer, but it tapers down to the same diameter as the other bolts or carriers, because this uses a standard diameter M4 style receiver extension. This has a short 308 buffer assembly in it, and the spring itself is 11.25 inches. That's on the long side, but that still makes it a carbine length recoil spring. So it's almost getting up to rifle length. Over here, we have an Arrow AR-10 bolt carrier and bolt, and this is its recoil system. It's using the short 308 buffer. Spring is 11.25, again, carbine length in its design. And if you take a look at this is the Springfield Victor 308 AR-10, its bolt carrier. You'll notice it has the exact same profile as the Arrow. I'm going to go ahead and say that Arrow is the subcontractor for Springfield making their bolts and carriers. With that being said, the Arrow uses the short buffer assembly. The Springfield is using the carbine length buffer assembly, and it has a carbine length recoil spring, which is 11.25 inches. So these two are pretty close to each other. You could probably swap out the receiver extensions and get either or to work. These three are completely different, and there are many more AR-10s out there than just this sample set, and many of them are going to have differences in them that would keep you from swapping parts back and forth, and this is one of the major reasons why AR-10s suck. They're just not standardized like your standard AR-15, M16, M4 is. In our Ruger SFAR video, I posed the question to the audience, would you like to see a comparison between the DPMS G2, which came to market right around 2014, that's when it was announced at SHOT Show, and the new Ruger SFAR, because the DPMS G2 was the first real attempt to shorten the .308 action and make it more the same size and weight as a 5.56 rifle. Later, about 5 years later, POF would come along with the Revolution, which would take that concept and blow it out and do even more with it, shorten the carrier even more, shorten the action even more, get the rifle even lighter. And then just recently, within the last year, Ruger would introduce the SFAR, which, following in the footsteps of the DPMS and the POF, they too were able to shorten the action to about the same size as a 5.56 rifle, get the weight down under 7 pounds for the rifle without an optic or a suppressor. And this rifle comes to market at a little over $1,100, making it extremely affordable. Now, as I've mentioned, my rifle here has ran flawlessly. Jason and I were blown away with the gun. When we first took it out of the box, we weren't excited about the gun at all. We thought, well, it could work, it may not work, we just don't know. Accuracy will probably be abysmal. We were blown away. 100% reliable, accuracy was outstanding, and the gun has just been a really, really cool gun. So much so, Jason decided he wanted to probably pick one up at some point down the road as well. But because the Firearms blog released a video after ours, and they showed their SFAR stumbling pretty much every magazine on a variety of different types of ammunition, it goes back to what I said in my first video. We have a sample set of one. I hope all the other Rugers are as good as this one. Obviously, they're not. So we have that second sample rifle out here. We're going to do some shooting with it to see if we have two samples that run well. And we will be taking the silencer off this one, so we can't say that additional gas back pressure is what's making it run. DPMS G2 versus the SFAR. So what changed? What did the DPMS G2 accomplish? And what did the SFAR do to improve upon that shortening of the action? This is my rifle all set up with the Primary Arms PLX 1-10 power LPVO. I cannot stress enough how much I like this PA LPVO. This thing is absolutely amazing with its lightweight mount. The scope itself is very lightweight. Coupled with the lightweight of this rifle, it makes for a very light .308. The optics clarity on this thing is second to none. If you're looking for a 1-10 power LPVO, this is definitely the way to go. And it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. We have 20 rounds of Federal 150 grain ball, no suppressor on the gun. Again, this is my rifle from the original video. I'm going to put my hand out. My hand's been cleaned up. I'm going to put my hand right around that gas block. That's how much gas I'm getting. That's nothing. Don't feel it. That's all the gas I'm getting. So if you're getting a bunch of gas there and it's literally hurting your hand where you require a glove to have your hand over that gas block, I'm going to go ahead and say the gas block is probably defective. You need to send it back to Ruger. That's on setting 2 on its gas regulator. It's a 4-position. 0 being off, 3 being max gas, 2 being somewhere in between. Put my OSS on there. Grab another 20 rounds of Federal 150 grain ball. Dial this magnification back a wee bit. Hand out over the gas block once again. It's kind of funny. It almost seems undergassed with the OSS on it. It's kind of crazy. Again, no more gas on the hand, even with the silencer in place. This is the Springfield Victor 308. This is an AR-10 offered by Springfield Armory. People had asked me questions about it. Here it is. If you take a look at the receiver back here, you're going to notice that, first of all, the upper receiver is a huge chunk. It's a standard AR-10 style upper receiver. If you take a look at the lower receiver, look at the overhang of the receiver. There's about an inch of overhang back here behind the pistol grip. This is a standard length AR-10 lower receiver. What we have on the rear of it is a buffer tube that is not a standard carbine length buffer tube. It's slightly longer, but we have a diameter of that tube that's the same as an AR-15. So the bolt head on this gun is AR-10 sized. It tapers down to 5.56 size so it can interface with a buffer tube that is the same diameter as, say, an M4 carbine. So this gun isn't a short action gun at all. All they've done is put a 5.56 style buffer tube receiver extension on it, put a really lightweight profile barrel on it to try to get the weight down, but internally this thing really isn't anything special and doesn't even belong in the same conversation as the next two rifles we want to talk about. So, DPMS G2, introduced 2014, one of the early guns out there to do this shortening of the action. Now, remember what I showed you on the Springfield? You'll notice here there is no overhang. The end of the pistol grip comes up to the end of the receiver, just like an M4 carbine. You'll also notice on the G2 that the standard carbine collapsible stock collapses all the way up against the castle nut. That's because this is literally the same length as an M4 carbine on this buffer tube. Same diameter, same length. That is really impressive. So they've shortened the action. They've made it about an inch shorter than a standard AR-10, and they've shortened the recoil assembly and used common parts from the M4 to make the stock and recoil assembly work. Out here you have the larger mag well, of course, with the shortened area being back here, a slightly changed ejection port. You can tell it from the original LR308, which was the standard AR-10 version that had the longer receiver, in that its dust cover looks a little bit off. This little piece right here where the locking detent is sitting further back. On the LR308. It would be further forward on the port cover. Inside the DPMS G2, this is what your bolt and carrier will look like. So here's your gas key, and you'll see how the diameter of it is the same as a standard M4 style bolt carrier. It's not big and thick like a standard AR-10, and this is the charging handle that goes with it. The Ruger SFAR. Now, as we pointed out, we're talking about the recoil springs. This stock is fully collapsed, so the receiver extension is slightly longer. It doesn't collapse all the way up against the castle nut. However, if you look back here, you'll notice that the pistol grip comes out, and there's actually a little plastic spacer right here that sits in front of the castle nut and comes down and gives you a QD point back here, and that is actually polymer. So this receiver is so short, they actually had to put a buffer, a spacer back here, just to get it to come out so the grip would come out and meet something, and then your castle nut is screwed on. Obviously, it can't be staked because you can't stake it to polymer. This rifle is lighter than, say, the Saint 308 because it has a shorter action. It's using that polymer piece back here, getting rid of some of that aluminum. This even has a medium profile contoured barrel, which the Saint has a pencil weight barrel, and this gun is still lighter than the Saint. So when you take a look at the bolt and carrier, this is a Fostech charging handle, but this is a standard carbine length, or just standard AR-15 M16 charging handle. Here's the bolt out of the SFAR. If we lay it next to the DPMS G2, it gives you an idea of just how much smaller the SFAR is to the G2. They've taken a good inch of length out of the entire system. If you take a look at the charging handle, this is the DPMS G2's charging handle. We put a standard AR-15 M16 charging handle on top of it. You can see that it's much longer. Well, you're going to say, well, that's just a standard AR-10 charging handle. Well, no, actually it's not. Here is an actual standard AR-10 length charging handle, and it's longer than the DPMS G2's charging handle. So here you have literally 3 different lengths of charging handles for the different rifles. Let me stack them up on top of each other here. 3 different lengths. Going back to my opening comments about no 2 AR-10s are the same. So if you're looking for a charging handle for your DPMS G2, happy hunting, because it doesn't use a standard AR-10, it doesn't use a standard AR-15 type charging handle. So the DPMS G2 is lightweight. It also has a heavy profile barrel on it. Once you put a can on it, it has a muzzle device on there for an AAC silencer. That's why that can's on there. This gun was lightweight for its time. It's using a metal handguard. They could have lightened it even more if they wanted to, but keep in mind, this is from 2014. This thing under 7 pounds. Every time you pick it up, you go, holy cow, I can't believe how ridiculously light this gun is. And you can see that it's actually a shorter action than the G2. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that evolution that has taken place, keeping in mind that the POF Revolution sits in between these two in terms of the developmental history. This came first, then the POF came second, and the SFAR was just recently introduced. This is the brand new SFAR that Jason picked up from Copper. This gun has not had a single round put through it yet, so this will be the first magazine through the gun. I have 20 rounds of Fiocchi 150 grain ball loaded into the PMag. Let's go ahead and charge it up. And you guys are going to learn with this, and my hand's up by that gas block again. You're going to learn with this whether or not this gun's going to work right out of the box. Have the PA3 power micro prism on here, one of my favorite sights. It's not zeroed yet. Uh-oh. We did lube it. Let's go ahead and just drop that round out so I don't lose it. Now, I'm not feeling any gas burning or otherwise hurting my hand out front. Short stroke. Yep, didn't pick a round up. All right, so this thing is on setting 2 like my rifle. Chances are we need to bump it up in gas to see if it's going to run. Ruger does say run it with the most gas available until the gun kind of settles in, then you can start to turn the gas regulator down. Let's go ahead and adjust that gas regulator to setting 3 and see if we can't get the gun to run more reliably. All right, so we've bumped the gas setting up to 3. I've topped off the magazine once again with Fiocchi 150 grain ball. Now let's see how the rifle works. Again, my hand's out there over the gas block. All right, perfect function. This is some 150 grain Federal, and this ammunition is supplied to us free of charge by Federal. I want to thank them for supporting the channel by doing that. Outstanding ammunition, hands out over the gas block once again. And let's see how she works with the Federal. Again, perfect function. So in the case of this rifle, it's just a simple matter of following Ruger's instructions and bumping that gas up a little bit until the gun settles in. Maybe by the end of the day, we'll be able to dial it back to 2. Either way, you'll notice it has an OSS muzzle device on it. Jason, like myself, would run a low back pressure OSS/Huxworks can on the gun. So setting 2 will probably be perfect once this gun settles down. It likes those 147s. So in the first video, we talked about the accuracy of my original rifle. The second rifle that we have out here today, here's some of the groups that it fired, starting off with 147 grain ball. This is literally the first group that it fired. 3-shot group, 1.8 inches. I dialed it down to get it onto paper, 1.8 inches again for a 3-shot group. Over here, we did another 3-shot group with the 147 grain ball, again using a very light hold, not bearing down on the rifle whatsoever. Got 0.8 inch of a group, so sub-minute with the 147 grain Norma. Over here, I put some 168 grain Norma in, Federal gold medal match in the rifle, and we got 1.4 inches, and that's pretty consistent with what we saw the other rifle shooting. It didn't really like the heavier match grade bullets. Then over here, we shot some of the 130 grain varmint ammunition with that cavernous hollow point. First round was a mil high. I brought it down a mil, fired my 3-shot group, and it was sub-minute at 0.9. So it definitely seems to like the lighter bullets, 147s, 130s. Over here, we put some 175 grain match ammunition in it, got a 1.5 inch group, and again, that's consistent with what the first rifle did with the heavier bullets. Down here, 1.6 inches using 147 grain ball, kind of bearing down on the rifle, lightly holding the rifle with the same 147 grain ball, 0.9 of an inch, very similar to what we saw up here. So what do we think about the guns? Well, first of all, the price, unbeatable. The things are like $1,200 or less, so they're less expensive than many AR-15s that are out there on the market in 5.56. The price is very attractive. The consistency in terms of the build quality, fit, finish, and all that good stuff between the two rifles we have here, flawless, outstanding quality as it would seem. The guns both have been reliable. We had to mess with the gas regulator per Ruger's instructions to get that gun working in the beginning, but chances are we can probably turn it down to gas setting too, like my rifle. The guns exhibit the exact same accuracy for the most part, and outside of that, it's just probably one of the best AR-10s on the market, if not the best AR-10 on the market. I did not experience any type of, gas cutting, burning, whatever when grabbing the handguard around the gas block on either of the rifles, either with or without a suppressor, which is something that we saw with the TFB guys. Without a suppressor, they couldn't even hold on to the gun and fire a few rounds. It would make them want to let go of the gun because the gas venting from the gas block was so much. Then the guns were short stroking and not working right with a multitude of ammunition. I'm going to go ahead and say their gun has a faulty gas block. Send it back to Ruger. Ruger's pretty good about fixing their mistakes, and their rifle is probably going to wind up working like these two rifles. Just an assumption. I don't know. So with a sample set of 2, I'm even more impressed with the Ruger SFAR. I look forward to your comments down below. If you would like to support us here at the Military Arms channel so we can continue to bring you content like this, please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. That's how we fund, so we can do videos like this. There is a link, again, in the video description down below. Also, right here on YouTube, you've got that little join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that join button, and you can support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Last but not least, please swing by and check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 15 years of support, and we will talk to you guys soon.